We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
You got to have the why, and we know our why. So
you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. Millions and millions of people have done this already. You can get help, you can get a roadmap, you can save a lot of time, money, and frustration. Welcome to the Value Add Podcast with K&K.
Hey everybody, Value Add with K&K. Crystal and Kenny here. Just want to say thank you so much for the support, for listening, the comments, everything. Keep it up. We'll keep going as long as we can.
And if you like what you're listening to, like what you're watching, tell your friends about it. Leave us a review. Maybe even give us 5 stars.
We love those.
That's how we can grow and continue to bring you guys value and spread the word.
Thanks, guys. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing, fabulous, wonderful episode of Value Add with K&K. And Crystal's looking at me. Today I'm excited because, ladies and gentlemen, it's been months and my voice sounded so terrible. But I'm back, baby, and I'm ready to go for another round of podcast season coming up in the next 2 to 3 months. We're going to be bringing on guests. I'm getting fired up. I'm actually going to work on the list today. Maybe if you're listening to this, I'm hitting you up. And if you try to deny me, I will chase you and come after you. So come on our podcast, share your story. Crystal's looking at me like, shut up and let me say something.
At this rate, he'll be losing his voice again soon.
No. The amount of steroids I'm on, Justin Timberlake can be on stage tomorrow if he lost his voice today.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
So we always think about K&K. We did a lot, and we filmed quite a few of our own because we had time. We didn't have people come on, which is kind of nice. But one of the things we thought about today to talk about off the cusp is recession. Everybody's using the R word. Interest rates are low. So we can talk about that for a minute, which is great. A lot of people fear that when interest rates go low and things are happening like this, that we are going to come on to a recession or a slowdown or a meltdown or a financial collapse or whatever. And everybody calls us, every week we're talking about, do you think we're going to a recession? Do you think real estate's going to go down? What do you think is going to happen? Oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. Guys, nobody really knows. We can look at fundamentals, we can look at data, but what we do know is that interest rates are crazy low. Crystal, do you agree?
I agree. And isn't that one of the factors? I mean, that it's kind of reasonable to wonder if we are going into a recession, because my thinking has always been that when rates are this low, it's because there's some uncertainty in the market. So to basically spur the market a little bit and give them some confidence that the government reduces rates.
Well, two things have happened. Jerome Powell, our buddy over there at the Federal Reserve, he has reduced the rate a quarter. I know Trump would have liked him to do 50 basis points, but he did that, I think, to throw a bone to the economy, to Wall Street, to everybody, saying that I realize that maybe something's coming, and I want to kind of get it's more of a psyche. That's more of a psyche, like a throwing a bone. I don't know if he's going to do any more. What he's talking about constantly is watching the market. And basically, what are they watching, guys? It's pretty simple. Consumer spending. We're watching housing. We're watching interest rates. We're watching trade, which we're having a problem right now with. Mm-hmm. We're watching jobs.
Which there's been a slowdown.
Slowdown. And then the other thing is you're watching, the flow of real estate. And why is real estate such a big thing is, real estate, if people are buying or moving or selling, people forget when somebody buys a home, I don't know the exact number. When somebody buys and closes on a transaction home, think of all the people that get paid. Appraisers, realtors, lenders, contractors, inspectors, insurance.
Places like Home Depot.
Home Depot. Like they say, if you buy a home and add $60,000 to the economy, one sold home in like California. But you think about it, you go, that's crazy. You're like, no, it's not. It's not. So all these fundamentals add up. We've got a lot of stuff going on. The world's crazy. Election year's coming up. The Fed lowered it. The treasuries are all-time lows. 30 years, 15 years, ARM rates for residential are low. Crystal, how are your rates looking?
Our rates are low, but we're kind of experiencing a little bit of what I think you are on your side as well, is that there's been such an influx of financing and lenders are so busy that they're actually artificially raising their rates right now just to slow down volume.
Yeah. So what happened, guys, is this is a good and bad thing, and then we can move on to the recession part. Is when you work in lending, which throwing this out there, anybody wants to know, is rates could probably be lower, but the problem is when you went from rates, let's say they're 5% and they went to 4%, and you have a point drop. Well, you have a herd of people that want to buy, refi, whatever it is, right, Crystal?
Exactly.
And the problem is you staffed up at 5%. You're not staffed for 4%.
Well, and the complaint that I'm hearing,
and so you're getting jam logged.
Log jammed.
Log jammed. Jam logged. Yeah. What the hell is jam
I'm
logged?
I just here to correct your grammar. But
I like
the
jam
thing,
logged. We're jam logged.
The thing that I'm also hearing a lot too from our lenders is these brokers, they're all putting these properties under contract with these short escrows, 30 and 45 days. So the brokers out there need to start thinking about this, is that all the lenders are getting backed up. They're getting a lot of files, and the lenders that used to pride themselves on fast closings are no longer closing fast. So they're not able to do those quick 30-day closes. The 45-day close is
I'm
getting
doing a
tough.
21-day close.
Good for you. But on the commercial side, if our standard transaction is 60 days, and I think a lot of us have gotten used to doing 30 and 45 days over the last couple of years, it's just become kind of like a new norm. But right now, lenders are super backed up. And so you really kind of need that 60 days. And the reason is, too, is because clients take a little while to get their stuff in. So you know, what happens to us a lot of times is people take maybe a week to get their paperwork in, and then they go like, why aren't we closing on time? It's like, well, you kind of took a week, so you kind of tack that on to the regular time frame that it takes to close a deal, and now you're late, you know? So it's really important to get your stuff in fast. If you're going into contract, I think everybody's going to understand right now that a 60-day close would be nice. And a lot of sellers, too, they need time to find their up leg. So It's not necessarily that fast close should be the best deal necessarily for getting an offer accepted right now. So it's really tough to find your up leg. So if that's the case, if you're purchasing a building, I would use that to your advantage, because right now we're really a little backed up. So
yeah, and with rates, it's a good and bad thing from a lender's perspective. When they drop this low, you know, it's great for business, it's great for everybody, but it really causes a lot of stress and delays. And like I said, is you're taking a lending, let's just call it like a big system, a big wheel, and you're really working it, and you don't have the manpower. And right now people are hiring new underwriters and new processors and new assistants, but these people have to come in, they have to get trained, and they're coming in to like a shitstorm of just craziness, and it's very hard to catch up. So
not to mention that I think a common problem right now is, I don't care what sort of business or industry that you're in, is finding quality employees. I mean, I've been seeing it a lot, as that hiring is getting tougher to find people, and people are even, businesses or employers are even lowering their criteria to get employees, because it's so hard to get good people right now, or people at all.
Yeah. So what today we wanted to talk about, we actually were listening to a podcast, and Greg, his name is Greg Willett, I think. He's an
economist for RealPage. He's
an economist for RealPage. If you don't know what RealPage is probably the second to Yardi, correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal, software company that you would use if you own multifamily, maybe you're a syndicate or you're property management, and you're probably going to use them more if you have Archstone, large, big apartment buildings,
like 100 plus
units.
Yeah.
Would it really make sense? They have all the bells and whistles and tools. But this guy is one of the most respected economists for multifamily, not just in one area, looks at every state. He was going through a lot of things, and the question they're asking is about the recession. And you know, a lot of people are calling and saying, you know, rates going to go lower next year. Do you think we're going to have a recession? Do you think you have a slowdown, this and that? And basically, a lot of people are still scarred from 2008, 9, 10. That was called the Great Recession for a reason, and that is not a normal recession. A normal recession lasts about a year. Real estate goes down typically about 20%. And obviously, depending on where you are in the country, what industry you do, or what you do, some people in a recession, they don't feel it. They actually are killing it and making more money. And some people in a recession feel like they're in a depression. It just depends on where you're at in life, what opportunities you have, and are you looking at the world as a recession? Or are you looking at it as there's opportunities?
Okay, and one of the things that isn't helpful though, and we've talked about this and heard a lot of people talk about it, is when you go, oh my gosh, are we going into a recession? And then you start slowing down your spending and you start not going out as much, or you start just like backing off on things, and it kind of perpetuates this recession, really. Like if we were going into one
subconsciously,
right, we're kind of getting into a recession faster because you're pumping the brakes on your spending, which is hurting the economy. And if you're doing that, how many other millions of people in the world are doing that? So a lot of us are scarred from the previous recession. I wouldn't say that I'm not. I mean, I look for the signs, and I think we're always kind of conservative on buying things because of that kind of fear that things might be scarce at some point. But if you kind of start backing off, it kind of gets the recession started early because everybody's pumping the brakes on spending, which is not good for the economy.
Yeah, and I would say, look, depends on where you're at, because today we're just going to talk about properties and owning properties and going through a recession. And obviously there's just common sense things to just go over. If you're a long-term, if you've got a big apartment guy or somebody out there that's buying, that acts like they don't care if there's a recession or a depression or whatever, some of these guys have plenty of liquidity, plenty of cash flow, and they're going to keep buying regardless of what's going on. High, low, whatever, they just buy because they have a completely different model.
Well, that's the question that we get a lot. Like, what are you guys going to do? What if we go into a recession? And it's like, some of our behavior is going to change, but to a large degree, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to kind of keep doing what we're doing. So we wouldn't necessarily stop buying per se. But I think at that point, let's say that we do go into a recession and maybe rents are going to dip a bit, or you might have a little bit higher vacancy. In San Diego, we've seen it not quite happen that way. Even in the last Great Recession, people are bunking up more. So there is some vacancy, but then in other places, you're actually having multiple people living in a unit. So you might have an over occupancy issue before you have a vacancy issue, especially for those C-class properties where you're going to see that happening more. And then, of course, people are going to move from those A properties to a B property, or from a B property to a C property. But the thing that you focus on more as an investor or an apartment owner is you're going to be focusing a lot more on your income and your expenses, your cash flow. So you're going to be looking a lot more. I would be looking a lot more at what are ways that I can get my vacancies filled faster? What kind of marketing can I implement? What kind of technology can I have? And then on the expense side, hey, look, where are we spending too much money? Where can we cut? Even on
where's the waste?
Yeah, because a lot of times what I see, especially in financing, is sometimes people are not, like, they haven't even checked who's the most competitive, like, person for trash or for their insurance, or things, just the easy things like that for years. So those are the first.
It could be your gardener, it could be pest control.
All of it.
When you're going to look at everything. So
you're just going to have to manage your cash flow a little bit more. And that's really the biggest difference that I see with apartments, because the beauty is hopefully you have multiple doors and all those people are paying your mortgage. And if they're not, and the expenses on the property, if you have some vacancy or a little higher vacancy, it looks like you're going to get a little bit less cash flow, but you still have all those people to help you pay the bills and cover the property.
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing now, and from reading and listening and all that, basically, I think everybody's aware that everybody's been building I'm not even going to say it's called luxury. So everybody's been building, because the dirt's expensive. They've gone out in every city and overbuilt luxury rentals. So let's talk about that. Luxury rental is where if you're in San Diego, for example, let's say downtown San Diego or Little Italy, and a 2-bedroom is $4,000. Or more. So that person that might feel a recession in their life, or they're like, we're not making our bonus, or somebody lost their job, they're going to move from there to most likely a Class A building, which would be like, Irvine Company, one of those big 200-300 unit buildings where they got the pool and the security and all that.
And really, they just move out of that area.
So they're going to go from 4,000 to probably 2,500, 3,000, somewhere in that mark. They're going to just slice it right. They're going to go there. Right now, luxury in San Diego has 1,000 vacant units as we speak. There's more coming online. So that number
Well, we read somewhere that the average vacancy on like a luxury building for luxury is like 10%.
Yeah.
Here.
And so in a recession, that's going to go
high.
way, it's going to go way up.
Yeah.
And
I would say for the rest of multifamily here, we're seeing vacancy more like 3% or less.
Or less. Depends on how you manage your property, right?
Right.
So then we go to A. Those A people that might lose their job, they're going to go to a B and C class. So let's talk about what are we going to do or what do you do in a recession? Look, if somebody is moving down and they're used to luxury to A or A to B or B to C, the first thing they're doing is they're probably moving out of property that's superior to where they're going to move. So they're going to look for the nicest B and C property. Crystal, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So that would mean the number one thing to focus on would be curb appeal.
Right.
And the number one thing Greg said that I would be more focused on in a recession is curb appeal is the most important thing. Why is that important? Because all of a sudden,
curb appeal is always important.
it's always important, but it's more important because when people are moving down and people are looking around, they're going to look at if your building is priced close, they're going to go to you first. Then they're going to go to the nicest, be the nicest seating, and then start from there.
Well, we see this a lot too, because just with all the rehabs and things that we've done too with different buildings, you see sometimes these owners that, wanted to do it themselves, and they went and they renovated the interior of the building, all the interiors, and then didn't get to the exterior. And they think that just because they made the apartment nice that it's going to rent for that amount of money. We actually looked at management for a guy a couple of years back.
I remember.
Yeah, over by Kensington, and the building was horrible on the outside. I mean, honestly, it looked terrible.
And he put all the money inside, and we were
and then
wrong.
You walk in the units, and the units are pretty nice, but it's the person who can afford to have a nice unit also wants, when their friends pull up or their family comes over to see them or anybody sees them walking into their apartment, that they have a nice place and they want to feel good about it too. So it's you want to feel good about where you live, and part of that is that all the common areas and the exterior is nice.
Yeah, so we've got to learn from a lot of big apartment owners in San Diego, and I would tell you the philosophy is this for them. They are definitely, I'm not going to say more concerned, but the guys that we know that do a good job, that run it right, that I'm not going to mention names, that are really good at it, they really focus on curb appeal, keeping it. We're not talking it doesn't have to be crazy, just crazy landscape. It's just very pull up, wow, this is a nice, just clean building.
Well,
some of them are more landscape, but it's nice, clean. You start there, and then you can go from there. Some of them do signage of that, but having that is so important. So the first thing when you buy a building, especially now, if you're buying a building, you're going to go to a recession, and you're thinking about what I got to do, the first thing you should really be doing, even start going inside, is just go on the outside, and what can you do? Is it paint? Is it landscape to make it nice? Because that's going to be the first thing before you start doing the inside units. We always say this: if you go redo all your inside of your units and somebody pulls up and you're trying to get that max rent, and they pull up, they're like, this place looks like a dump in the inside, and you don't, and like Crystal said, you run out of money or you can't do it. The next person that comes around, you're going to really get crushed because you told them, oh, we're going to fix it up, and you never did.
Well, there's a couple other issues with that. The first thing I wanted to say is that one of the issues that we had even as a management company would be that some of the owners would be upset that we would charge porting fees, because we actually had a porter at one point. When you get to a certain level where you have all these small properties that are not big enough to have on-site staff that can pick up around the property, so you end up having trash laying around.
Super
especially
smart.
Yeah, the homeless issue in San Diego is getting worse and worse, so you don't know what's happening there. The residents don't always care. Again, I actually found that the people in the nicer units, when we were rehabbing properties in North Park, for example, I couldn't get somebody to, hey, I'll give you a couple bucks every month to clean the laundry room or to pick up. They're like, I don't want to do that. They're working professionals. They don't want to do that. They want to come home and they want the place to be already nice and clean. So we had a porter, and some of the owners would complain. Most of them I got to kind of come around on that idea, because that comes around to the curb appeal. So once you fix up the property, you have to keep it nice. It needs to be picked up. It needs to look clean. It's a few extra bucks every month for everybody to feel nice and to feel good about where they live. The laundry room is a big one. The laundry rooms sometimes would be so dirty. And that's one of the things, you want to go into the place to wash your dirty clothes and feel like they're going to be clean when they come outside of the laundry. if your laundry room is disgusting, nobody's going to want to be in there. So that's definitely like one of the bigger focuses that we have. So it's not just about doing the curb appeal, it's about maintaining it
Oh,
too.
of course. Yeah. So what we do on our properties, all of them is, even if it's minimal landscape, we have our landscaper go there once a week. Some people are like, that's crazy. I go, no, it's not. He's there every week to weed, blow. Basically, he kind of picks up and ports the property. I think it's super important. If you have a 100+ unit building,
That's like
you're
daily
smart,
almost.
you're having a porter go daily. You might even have an on-site maintenance guy, and that person in the first couple hours of the morning when they get there, unless there's an emergency or something, they are 95% of the time they're porting the property for the first hour, and then they're going from there. So, Tiffany's coming in. Sorry.
That's big for so the curb appeal is important, and also just like maintaining the curb appeal.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. I mean, too, we say this also in financing. I tell people all the time, if you're not keeping up your property, that it's going to cause the appraiser or the lender to start nitpicking. The same goes with your tenants. If they move in, like you said, for example, and you tell them that something's going to get done and it doesn't get done, it starts building that kind of resentment that they didn't get what they were paying for, essentially, or what they think they're paying for. And then they start nitpicking. They start complaining about every little thing that's going on with the property, and they start having issues. So that's the other reason why you really want to maintain your property and keep it looking nice, because the more you start doing that, and especially if you're trying to charge market rents, people they're gonna be picky about that. They want to get what they're paying for.
Yes, let's go through a couple things here. I know we're kind of all over, but this is how when we're talking about a recession, this is what Crystal and I have conversations about. So number one, let's talk about what could happen in a recession is lending could get tighter. Commercial lenders.
We're already seeing it.
Commercial lenders, just so you know, they don't have RESPA. They can say, Crystal, I don't like your building. I'm not going to lend on you. And they have the right to do that. Do they, Crystal?
Absolutely. I actually had a lender this week. I can give you an example on a purchase. And it was a client that hasn't really owned multifamily before. But they have, they're partnering with their family. It's a high net worth individual, and they had never done business with this lender before. And the property cash flowed to a 70% loan to value. And the lender came back and said, well, this is a first time client for us. So because they're a first time client, we don't want to give them 70% loan to value. We're going to limit it to 65. And if you saw this person and their financial capability, it makes absolutely no sense. So I think a couple things are happening. For one, we're going back to how busy lenders are right now because the rates are really low. So they've artificially raised rates to slow down volume. And I think now they're just cherry picking. But the other thing is that we are seeing other lenders that are getting more conservative. There's another lender that most of us know and use. They've gotten a lot more conservative about cash out and about going to max LTV. They won't even go to max LTV. In fact, they're pretty much like 65% LTV. And that's what they're comfortable doing because they're starting to see some signs that we're at the peak.
No, they're just getting uncomfortable.
I mean, even in Southern California, and people are watching like all of these regions too. It's not just as a nation. So Southern California, we've had very little rent growth this year. So rents have not been growing the way that they were previously, which I think is actually a good thing. Rents have been going crazy for the last few years, but we haven't seen that rent growth. So I've seen units take a little bit longer to fill in certain areas. Some are filling like that, and then other ones are taking a little bit longer.
Correct.
Lenders that I'm talking to also that are funding loans for those high-end luxury units that we're talking about are seeing that on the initial. So when the first tenant moves out, the first person that ever lived in that unit moves out, or even they stay, upon lease renewal or the new lease, the new tenant, the second time in, that rents are going down. So those high rents that they were getting on those
new rehab unit, the second time around is coming in lower.
Or a new luxury unit.
Yep.
So after that, when they go to renew their lease, they're actually renewing at a lower rate or renting to a new person at a lower rate.
So basically, guys, the first point we talked about is in a recession, lending can start to change. And that's what they count on this and they can start getting conservative. Why they're getting conservative is because they're getting more data. And as we get further away from rents were raising till they went flat, the data is getting longer and longer. It went from, started flat 6 months ago. Now it's 12 months. Now it's 2 years. And then they start seeing from luxury to ABC what's going on. And then they really start targeting down, like, where do we want to lend? Where do we want to be? Outlining areas that if you're not in major cities, they start going, we're not going to lend there. Or if we lend there, we're going to start cutting back on LTV. So one of the things that's really important is keeping your property nice, ported, clean, like Crystal said, because you're going to get the best rents, the best tenants, and have the chance of the best financing. Because a lender, even though you're in a good area, could go out there and be like, you know what, Crystal, I like the deal, but this property is basically slummy. We don't like it. And
I just had a lender this week turn down a property because of curb appeal.
Exactly.
That's not really the look of the property that they want to put their name on.
So and 2 years, 3 years ago, I don't think anybody would have said that because we're in an upswing. So number one is lenders start getting conservative. And we just talked about the curb appeal. The other thing that you guys got to start thinking about is if you're buying a building, leveraging a building, and you're requiring these crazy, crazy rents where you're pulling, stretching, and all this to have to give iPads or phones or 1 month free or whatever it is, that could be a problem for you. So
we're having that happen too. So again, with some of those new rehabbed units where you're getting top of the market rents, and then you're like, great, I can make a little more money. I'm going to charge pet rent or things like that. Actually, upon refi, our lenders are not including that income if it's over and above the total market rent. So even though you're getting rents a little bit higher.
So for example, let's say the market rent for an area like B-class building, nicest one is $2,000. What Crystal's saying is like,
if you're getting $2,100 because that person has two pets and you charge $50
with this, great for you. Lender, nah, they're not going to use it. You can complain.
A lot of times they count parking because parking can be considered separate.
But if you're overcharging for parking, they might not. They might, well, that's excessive for the area.
They can do that. Yeah. And we haven't seen that at all. Well, we haven't really seen it much up until recently. So I'm starting to see a little bit of pushback with appraisers as well on some of the those like market rate deals.
Yeah. So what Crystal and I did is we, when we buy a property, we go in, we put the money in, we get it rehabbed while we can now. We get the rents up. We, try to get everybody, everything done, make the property look nice, new, comfortable with the tenants, everything kind of smooth going. Because if we are coming into this, I'm not, maybe things slow down, you don't have the capital, whatever, you don't really feel like putting it in when you feel broke or it's just cash flowing. So now's the time to get the property looking good. If you're going to try to get your rents up, get it up now. In a recession, to try to do all this is going to be a lot harder, trust me, because of competition. Then also financing is tougher. So that's the other thing is we just go in and we're going to get stuff done now. We're not going to kick the can down the road 2 years ago. Well, I'll get to that building in 2 years. Hey, if you're a big guy and you can afford it, that's a completely different model. Good for you.
And we've never operated that way to begin with, recession or not. Yeah. So like I said, we're kind of doing a lot of the same things that we would have done anyways. Our behavior hasn't changed too much. I will say that probably the biggest change for us is that we did see a slowdown coming. I've seen so many rehabs on the market. So for me, I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things. But we did kind of make that decision when we purchased our most recent building to say, hey, we're going out of a neighborhood that's really expensive now and where people are just rehabbing buildings left and right. It's getting really saturated with rehabs to more of like a working class C quality neighborhood where we can get more steady cash flow. So there was definitely income opportunity to increase the income and increase the value, which we're going for, but we're not like vacating the building and rehabbing every unit. We're doing more small improvements to the property that are going to increase the value and increase rents.
Yeah, and the building we're at, curb appeal looks pretty good. We're just working on some other part just to make it look as good as possible. That's
landscaping, Kenny's favorite.
That's 100% right. The other thing I think about when entering a recession is, like Crystal said, let's talk about the expenses. So it's not just on one property, it's across the portfolio. Like right now, could you refi and save money? Number one, a lot of people are doing interest only on their refis for multifamily, for example, because they want more cash flow, because they know I've done everything, I'm pulling cash. I just want to have maximal cash flow for the next 5, 7, 10 years where I lock in. The other thing is when you look at expenses is, like I said, is this is the time where you want to start digging down on all your properties. Are you maximizing the cash flow? Great. Do you have the rents? Can you do anything to make the rents great? If you're done there, good. Is there anything you do the outside the building increase the laundry, anything like that, ACs, parking, whatever, to increase the income. Okay, look at that. The next thing is how do you increase income is decrease expenses. So go look at your insurance. Go look at your water, trash, everything. Can you do rubs? You got to look at it all, because when you come in a recession, this stuff is going to play a part. And maybe you're not thinking about it now because thinking you've been good, fat, and happy. And we're not talking about just us. Big syndicators, they're already starting to look at this stuff because they're not going to wait till they're in it. They know it's coming, and now's the time to start getting ready. And some of them might slow down. They're not acquiring as much property in deals too. So they're fat and happy. Things have been good, but they realize you're going to.
Well, it's harder to find deals.
Exactly.
Right now too.
So the other thing is that, there's good and bad for recession. If the market does come down 10, 20%, whatever, that obviously opens up deals and opportunities for people that can take advantage of them. And I think we all have to remember, we have this cycle. We have built a lot all over the country. I don't think we've overbuilt. In some places, we're not even close, like here. But there is a big wave of people that are in high school and college that are going to come into the working world, and they're going to need a place to live. And they're coming strong, and they're coming hard. Even if we hit a little recession, it's going to be crazy. So between 2023,
coming strong, and they're coming hard.
Between 2023, listen, learning 2023 and 2035 is going to be the biggest spending era of millennials. That is when they're going to be out of the home, out of college, out of high school, and they're going to be renters. They're going to be buying cars. They're going to be buying houses. They're going to be racking credit cards up. They're going to buy everything. So basically,
they're going to help boost the economy for
so
sure. They're going to be
wherever we're at right now, if we go into a slowdown, your goal is to hunker down, cut expenses, keep your property nice, pay attention to stupid stuff. Make sure your personal overhead isn't crazy if it is. If you have crazy personal overhead, sell a car, pay off credit cards. Like, start consolidating now. You don't wait. Remember, guys, lending does not get easier in a recession. Usually gets harder. So when you think, oh, I'll just refinance this, what if your property value goes down 20% and the equity 60% goes to 80% and you can't refi?
Well, or not even that. Again, like you mentioned, lenders tend to just scale back. So the lender that was at a max 75% LTV might say, well, we really only feel comfortable going to 65 or 70.
Do you want to know what FHA just did? FHA just went from an 85% cash out for a very long time. They just cut it to 80. There's things
that kind
when
of
you
stuff.
see these things happening, there's a reason why they're happening, because the government, everybody, they're getting ready for a slowdown recession. The job numbers came out today. They're a little shy. They're looking at that. Like that guy Greg was looking at the transportation, right, of products, trucking and shipping and
is down.
And railroads and all that. It's down. That means that's movement of product.
So basically what that means, though, is that businesses are not comfortable to carry as much inventory. So they're carrying lower inventory than they have in the past. So that is causing less movement, which means that they're not planning on selling as much as they've been selling.
Yeah. And so the other thing is that when you come out of this recession, that's when you would make the money or when things get better, because all these people, millennials, are going to be, but we are going to, who knows? This is 5 years, 7 years. The other thing that people are talking about is what about rent control? And maybe, if you have a vacation rental in the laws and everybody goes, what are you going to do? I said, well, when the law passes, it's called, you deal with it. What else do you do? There is nothing. Are you going to sell everything and go to where?
Well, there's some preparation I would make with rent control, at least. So, for example, with rent control, that's why we keep our rents close to market.
Correct.
I never want to be that person that's operating with rents hundreds of dollars below market or 25% below market or whatever. I am of the belief that you keep your rents like $50 or so below market, just because I think the retention is better. I don't need to get tip of the top market rents. And even when we've done rehabs and we do lease them at market, I'm not that person after the first year to be doing a rent increase. I just don't believe in it. So I give them a year break. I'm like, I already got you for the market rent for year 1. I'll give you a break on year 2. Year 3, I'll give you a small increase. But I think overall you want to stay close to market for your rents. So for one, you don't want your tenants to freak out the first time you give them a rent increase if you're not giving them very often. So I think they need to get used to kind of being close to the market. Their rent's moving with the market. There's nothing unfair or not nice about that. Also, there's inflation and costs go up and the cost of utilities go up. So these are all things that you need to kind of keep in mind when you're talking about rent. So for rent control, regardless, I think you should keep your rents close to market. But if rent control is going in place and your rents are super below, then start doing your rent increases. It's time to do it now because you don't want to get left holding that bag when rent control does go into place, because we don't know what the rules are going to be. We're pretty confident something's going to happen at some point. Who knows when, but it will happen at some point. There's going to be some sort of rules they're going to have to implement just to quiet people down. And whenever that comes, you just want to be prepared.
Yeah, and I think to wrap it up, I don't look at a recession negatively. A lot of people do really well in a recession. Obviously, certain sectors and things of the economy might suffer more. The stock market might tumble more than housing. But I would just say this. If you're buying a deal and you're paying a top of the market price for a rehabbed retail, super expensive, $400 per door in North Park, and the rents $400,000 a door, and the rents are way above market because they gave an iPad away, or 2 months of free rent and you bought it, you didn't know, and you're maxing the loan amount out, you might feel some pain for a couple years if you have to re-rent, and also you're having to deal with that turnover when you come in. They're like, you could be $200-$300 less, literally. The other thing is to think about is the slow times of rental season. Sometimes the slow times have been slower and worse later.
Last year was much worse.
So as we hit a recession, that slow gets even slower. So if you're doing leases, probably try not to let them in, like if you can, and like October through February, but the really, really bad months seem to be January and February have been terrible.
Yeah, I still don't have it. Our leases expire anytime from October through February, because then I'm like, okay, well, we're going into Thanksgiving and Christmas. Who wants to be moving during those times? So you're probably going to be advertising rent concessions for people. So we never do that. It's just one of our things. So you make your leases anywhere from like 9 to like 13, 14 months
15
long.
15 months, yeah.
15 months long sometimes. It just depends. So you stagger your leases. And the other thing is, if you have a bigger building, this is something that a lot of larger apartment owners are already implementing. But some of the mom pops out there don't think about these things. And we did as a management company, is that you don't want too many people's leases expiring in the same month too.
Because that's a huge...
Yeah, because your turnover risk is just a lot higher. So you stagger your leases that way as well. So, I mean, for example, at our new building that's 30 units, I would look and say, I probably don't want more than like 5 or 6 people's leases expiring in the same month.
So that's like Crystal said, you might do... You're on a 9-month, you're on 11, you're on a 10, 12,
some people are
whatever.
just so used to doing a 12-month lease. It's like a 12-month lease. It's a 12-month lease. No.
There's a strategy. There's strategy.
9 months. You can do 10 months, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So you don't have to just stick to that rule because it's just the way you've always done it.
Yep.
You stagger them to make sure that they're not going to be expiring during slow season, and you don't have, 10, 15, 20 people all expiring in the same month.
Yeah, that's actually another really important thing to realize. Just when leasing in general, but when you come to a slowdown, those slow months are going to be really slow, and you could be vacant for 2-3 months and giving major concessions.
And that's what we talk about too, like in a recession, when I say pay more attention to your cash flow, is that I think a lot of us, because we're so busy, are just going on like robots sometimes and just like, okay, sign a 12-month lease, or this is the way it is. This is the way it operates. No, there's a lot of little things that you can do on your property if you're not implementing them yet to try and safeguard against vacancy loss, or, people turnover or additional expense, those sorts of extended vacancy. All that kind of stuff is stuff that you want to think about, especially if things are going to get to feel a little tighter for a while. It's really easy to start focusing on your cash flow and making sure that you're not going to feel that hit as much as you would have otherwise.
So Crystal and I would buy deals. We're not scared of that. We're going to buy deals. What we're going to do, we're going to watch our expenses. We're going to watch our personal expenses. I think in a recession, marketing is really good. If you're good at what you do in your business, you could also pick up more market share because competitors that might not be willing to spend on marketing are as good, that are kind of living off of the fumes that are out there. They might just decide to go get another job because they can't hold on because things slow down. So a recession can create opportunity, and for others, it's not. So I wouldn't fear it. I would just get educated about whatever it is you're investing in, real estate wise, and just pay attention to the cash flow and the numbers, and just make sure your property looks decent. Doesn't have to be the best one on the block, but you don't want it to be the worst.
Some good advice.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
So
I think that's a good topic. It's
great,
a good way
guys.
to wrap it up.
Hopefully you learned something from that. We're out.